We have Jain temples, we have Bauddha iconography, we have in the Hindu pantheon, we have got the Shaivite, we have got the Sakta, we have got the Vaishnavites, everything, like everything chronologically, you can see in Orissa temple. It reads like a timeline of history. When we talk of the history of Orissa, much has been written, much has been said, much has been seen, examined, researched, all of it which is tangible. But the intangible part of it, the history of nearly 1/3 of the population of the state, the cultural heritage could not be recorded, like I told you, because they had no written script. Anil Dheer, the convener of INTAC's Bhubaneswar chapter and the co-convener of the Orissa chapter. I have been a keen student of history, archaeology, specifically of Orissan history, heritage, culture and archaeology, working on it since the last 2 decades. We know Orissa, the province or the particular, the eastern region in ancient times or in today's context where it is clearly defined as a particular state, has a lot of history, heritage, culture, tangible, intangible heritage attached to it. Much work has been done, predominantly in the last few years, that has concentrated basically on the Jagannath cult and the Kalingan style of temples, which are unique and they stand apart compared to all the other temple structures of India. Orissa has a recorded history which is at least 2,500 years old. We have record. By recorded history, I mean evidential history. We know that history is basically based on a lot of oral tradition, a lot of myths and a lot of legends and all. But the extent of, when you go to historiography, the extent of evidential history which we find in the province. By evidential, I mean by way of obviously archaeological findings, by way of rock edicts, by way of copper plate inscriptions. By evidential history, we mean, how it stands apart from, if you look at the historiography angle of it is, most of the history of Orissa written and still being researched is based on solid evidences. Evidence like archaeological findings, evidences like rock edicts, copper plate inscriptions, a lot of numismacy. The temples of Orissa, the sheer embellishments of temple of Orissa, the way the carvings on it, the sculptural representation inside and outside the temples, practically is a socio-economic, cultural history of the state for the last at least 1400 years. Each temple and its sculptural iconography tells the tale of Orissa, tells the tale of the past glory of Kalinga, tells the tale of a very, very rich culture, a very, very rich heritage which was there in previous times. We have got the Sun Temple of Konark, which is a World Heritage Site. We have got the Puri Temple, we have got the Lingaraj group of temples in Bhubaneswar. But besides this, we have got, the whole of the state, irrespective of the geographical location. We have got temples on the seashore, we have got temples deep in the forest, we have got temples in the Mahendragiri hills, temples which date from the earliest period of maybe 3rd or 4th century. Very roughly hewed temple. In fact, the origin of the temples can be seen on the Mahendragiri hills, the Bhima temple. The Orissan temple architecture spans a period of 2000 years. It represents nearly all the religions, and the various the sub-forms of the religion. Like I'll tell you, we have Jain temples, we have Bauddha iconography, we have in the Hindu pantheon, we have got the Shaivite, we have got the Sakta, we have got the Vaishnavites, everything, like everything chronologically, you can see in Orissan temple. It reads like a timeline of history. While I say this, while I talk of these tangible assets, we should also say that Orissa has a sizable tribal population. A sizable tribal population which has been there since millennia. We have 62 different tribes, out of half of which are nearly PGBTs. They are primitive groups of very vulnerable tribes. Now, these tribals have been in the highlands, they have been in the forests, they have lived in isolation and lived for millennia, for 2,000-3,000 years. Obviously, because tribals, none of the tribes had a script. All the history, all the traditional knowledge was passed on the oral way. Knowledge was passed from mother to daughter, from father to son, from tribal chief to the other person, medicine man to medicine man. But the inherent sheer depth, sheer amount of knowledge which the tribals possess by way of knowledge about seeds, knowledge about the weather, knowledge about water conservation, knowledge about the forest, knowledge about the ethnobotany. When I say ethnobotany, I mean to say that for a tribal, every tree, every leaf, every root, every bark, every fruit of the tree has some value. The concept of the sacred grove, which has been prevalent for thousands of years, is something which is still practiced today. So when we talk of the history of Orissa, much has been written, much has been said, much has been seen, examined, researched, all of it which is tangible. But the intangible part of it, the history of nearly 1/3 of the population of the state, the cultural heritage, could not be recorded, like I told you, because they had no written script. And the tribal studies have become only in the last century. Before that, there were the badlands and much work had not been done. Why I am telling this is that I will be speaking about the studied culture and history of heritage of the state, but ignoring the tribal culture, putting that in isolation will not do justice. Yeah. Now coming to a part of it, really if you see we jump start, or when real history starts, ancient history, it starts with the Kalingan war, Ashoka's coming to Orissa, the war being fought, its transformation, how he got transformed, and how Buddhism spread all over the world from the coasts of Orissa. We have a string of dynasties, in a few of which were really, you cannot even call them king, they were emperors who extended the kingdom, from the Ganga till the Kaveri, who patronized the arts and culture, the remnants of which we see today. Orissa has been a lodestone for travelers. We have got innumerable accounts spreading over the last 600 years, or if you even go further, when Huinsang and Fa Hien also came, of travelers, Persian travelers, Greek, French, Dutch, English, Persian, whoever, they all came to Orissa and they wrote about the journeys in Orissa, the kingdom and all that. The ASI has done a few excavations, but unfortunately very few. Wherever they have done, very important finds have been made. Some of the reports have been published, some still not. Some of the excavations done were half done, they were not completed and just left that way. But the excavations done in the Buddhist sites, Ratnagiri, Lalitagiri, Udayagiri and many remnants there, they quantify, justify and sort of prove the importance of Buddhism, the spread of it from Orissa. In fact, we know of Nalanda and Taxila, but there was a very big university complex called the Pushpagiri complex, which was at that given time the center for Buddhist studies. In fact, it's also believed that both Huinsang and Fa Hien had come looking for Pushpagiri. Now we are telling in context of post Ashokan period, but prehistoric sites, cave paintings, very rock shelters, they are prevalent all over the state. Stone Age period, Iron Age, Bronze Age, every period, finds have been made. In fact, the Bhima Mandali group of rock shelters, which are near Redakhol in Sambalpur, there are nearly 800 to 1000 rock shelters which have yet not been documented. The few that have been documented and studied by experts reveal that Orissa has a very big prehistoric significance also. We have ourselves in a course of travels found rock tools, so stone age tools, so many of them for the just for the picking up and all. I'll give you a rough example now. As of today, the Archaeological Survey of India, which has an office in Bhubaneswar, it has 2 divisions. They have less than, they have about nearly 180 or 90 protected monuments in their fold. These are the monuments which are of national importance. The state archaeology has around 210 monuments which they look after. And we have a World Heritage Site of Konark. So altogether, if you take a total of all the existing heritage which has got cognizance from either the state archaeology or the ASI, is less than 300. In the course of our working with INTAC in the last 1.5 decade, our teams, I have been involved in most of them, have already documented more than 6,500 tangible heritage sites spread all over the state, and we are still counting. We still have about 13 districts to go. So whereas the government is taking cognizance of only 300, and in our estimation there are about 12,000 ancient heritage which are lying in a very decrepit, in a neglected state, which the government should take care of. It's not easy with such a large amount of this thing it is done, is not easy, but nevertheless the moot point is that most of it is getting lost. In the last 20 years, Orissa has become a hotspot for idol thefts. Like I told you, we had iconography ranging from the early Jain period till the Ashtadhatus of the last 200 years and all that. Every single piece of loose lying Jaina architecture has been stolen. Most of it was taken away. Like Orissa has always been a land which was conquered by, it was under conquest throughout its 500-600 year old history. We were conquered by the Afghans, we were by the Mughals, the Marathas, the East India Company, and the Britishers, and everybody who came. They took a pound of flesh. And while some, did it with bad intentions or dishonorable, but many of the finer statues were removed. Many of them were taken abroad. Many of them are lying in the coffers of the British Museum. Many are displayed in private collections and museums all over this thing. Some of the very oldest statues, and it's still going on. There's hardly a day when a temple theft is not reported. The Ashtadhatu images, practically 90% have been stolen. So this is one aspect where we do a lot of advocacy and activism. We want the government, to have a special task force, to have a particular, a heritage, a police force, which will look, because Tamil Nadu has one, and we have so much. We have so much, and the way the rampant thefts are going on, very soon we will be losing all of our very, very valuable, or you call it very precious and very old, these things. Now coming to Orissa, I'll talk of Orissa. I'll talk of 2-3 things, which will reflect the sheer neglect. One was the fort of Shishupalgarh on the outskirts of Bhubaneswar. Vintage is from the BC period. A fort which had, you can know the history of 700-800 years of occupation, then abandoned. Just on the outskirts of Bhubaneswar, a very rich archaeological site. Excavations were made even 100 years ago, and much was found. But in the course of the last 3 decades, the entire fort, which spanned nearly 1,000 acres, the entire fort was occupied, was encroached, and the 95% of the existing structures there were demolished, destroyed, or carted away. Today what remains is about 5 or 6 acres and just a few pillars left. It was a very important fort at the tri-junction of 3 rivers. One of the reasons it was abandoned was, what we guess, is because of frequent flooding. And this frequent flooding, the whole fort was like it was like a time capsule when the few excavations were done. Shishupalgarh was studied even by Indian and foreign universities. It was a fort which was beyond compare, one of the most unique forts maybe in the country. But in spite of even legal intervention, we lost it. The plight of the Sun Temple of Konark. Very few would be aware that the existing Sun Temple is only 25% of what the original was. The main temple fell off, it's indeterminable, but quite some years ago. And the Jagamohan and the Natamandap is also half, the roof is not there. The Jagamohan was also in a precarious state at the turn of the last century, when the Britishers really took interest. So, looking at the very delicate structure and thinking that it would cave in, they had filled up the whole structure. They dug a hole on the top and packed it with sand, hoping that the sand will keep the roof, it will support the roof. This happened about 120 years ago. The sand was packed with good intent. There was an Indian archaeologist and engineer who was involved in it. It was done under British supervision. Now what has happened is, many a time we know, like in the Puri temple or in Konark, cracks appear, big rocks fall off, and we know the temple is in a deteriorating stage. So the whole question of removing the sand, what was later found out by experts, by foreign experts, was that the sand which was once supporting the roof is no more now supporting the roof. It has come down to a great extent. It is 6 or 7 feet below the roof. It has compacted over the years, and it offers no more support to the roof at all. Rather, it exerts a lot of pressure on the sides of the temple. So the experts had got together and said that this should be removed, the sand should be removed, and a proper, on a scientific line, on a conservation line, they should be fixed with, whatever you call it, for the, you put up support system, or inside, you put up this thing so that the roof can be made stable and secure, minus the sand. And the sand also gets wet, it doesn't get dry, So that thing hung in the balance for nearly 20 years. Experts after experts, and everybody, the CBRI, Roorkee was involved, IIT was involved, foreign experts were also called in, and nothing was done. The courts had to intervene, and now they have started the process of removing it. Not that any sand has been removed, just the basic infrastructure is being made. But it waits to be seen, because the temple is in such a delicate state, it's in a very, very delicate state, that even if a small earthquake happens in that area, the survival of the temple will be a very big question. I told you about Konark, I told you about Bhubaneswar, and I told you about the Shishupalgarh fort. Likewise, the temple at Puri, which also is about 800-900 years old now, and the Lingaraj temple, which is practically contemporary with it, and many of the temples in all of them are in a precarious state. The Puri temple specifically, Many a time, once again, the Supreme Court and the High Court intervened, looking at the status of the temple. Same thing, big rocks fell off, cracks appeared, and the stability of the temple was under question. Expert panels were set up, but nothing much came out of it. Even today, with the court's orders, some piecemeal work has been done, but we even get to know now that rocks are falling, and many things are happening. When I told you about the sheer number of temples, it is generally believed, and there is a notion that Orissa is the land of Jagannath, and it's the Aradhya Devata, it is the god of the state. But looking at the temple point of it, this statement is wrong. Orissa has only 4% Jagannath temples. 51% of the Orissan temples are Shaivite temples. It's a land of Shiva throughout the state. By the banks of the river, in the villages, in all the major, all of them. 51% of Orissan temples are Shaivite temples, living temples, which are even as of today. Only 4 to 5% are Jagannath temples. Yes, Jagannath had got a lot of royal patronage. The princely and the feudatory kingdoms of Orissa, the kings set up temples inside the palace complexes. They patronized it. The tradition of Rath Yatra was replicated in the kingdoms, not only in Orissa, then it went out. It is happening in so many other places. So the general idea that Orissan temples, if you really want to study of it, Jagannath temple in its antiquity is the Puri temple, and maybe about 3 dozen more, but the others are all very recent temples in the last 150 years. Now, I told you about the sheer number of temples spread all over. In TAC, we conduct many projects. We had conducted the Jagannath Sadak project. The Jagannath Sadak project was a project in which we remapped the old pilgrim route, because we know that travel to Puri and the tradition of the Rath Yatra has a recorded history of nearly 500 years. Pilgrims used to come to Puri. How would they come? There was a road. The road was called the Jagannath Sadak. It started from somewhere in the Jagannath Ghat on the Hooghly River in present-day Kolkata, and it wound its way through Bengal, Orissa, and reached Puri. It was basically a coastal road. An important road which was mapped very early. Even we have got maps as early as 1790 which have the Jagannath Sadak drawn on it. Now the Jagannath Sadak was not only a pilgrim road, it was also a road which was taken by all the marauders who conquered Orissa. It was an important trade route. Orissa had a thriving trade in the export of rice, export of salt, textiles, saltpeter. It was also a road that was taken, I told you, by all the marauders. Anybody who conquered Orissa came on that road. The Afghans came, followed by the Mughals, followed by the Marathas, and later on the East India Company, and then the British forces. And this road was the road which was taken by most of the great holy sages who had come here. Nanak had walked down the road, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had walked down the road, Kabir, Namdev, Ramanujan, you name it. Most of the sampradayas existing at that time, sometime or the other, they had come to Puri, set up their mutts there, and even all along the way, the Gaudiyas, the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, had a mutt every 30-40 kilometers on the old Jagannath Sadak. Now this Sadak, how did the pilgrims come? Most of them walked. A few came in bullock carts. The richer people came in palanquins. They came in horse-drawn carriages. The elephants were used by the kings and the royals. Wound its way from Calcutta, Medinapur, Baleswar, Jajpur, Cuttack, and it is there. Hostile places, there were 8 major rivers and around 20 minor rivers. Most of them used to be in spate for 2-3 months a year. A lot of infrastructure was made. It's a very thriving road, like I said, thousands of pilgrims used to come. So Intac had taken up a project too. Now what happened was the railways came in 1898. When the railways from Calcutta to Puri, the line was laid and train service started. Obviously the journey time came down to in 20 hours. And previously when they used to walk and come, it used to take a month. So people stopped using the road and the road went into oblivion. People forgot about the road. But nevertheless, many of the structures which were existing of the roads were still there. 10 years ago, Intac had taken up a project. We wanted to remap the whole road, because whenever we made our preliminary studies, we found that the rich history of the road, oral history, traditional history, legends and all that. And there were many monuments and heritage structures, old of the period ones which were there, which included bridges, included dharmshalas, included rest houses, included ghats. Many were there, ponds, wells. So we undertook a bullock cart journey from Kolkata to Puri, walking all the way, interacting with the villagers, hearing the history, recording it, photographing it, filming it. And we had a 3-volume report on the Jagannath Sadak, which is being published by the Odisha State Archives. It will be released very soon. When we did this report, we realized the extent, of not only Odishan heritage and culture, but basically Jagannath heritage and culture, how it travelled outside Odisha, how it went up north, and how it spread all over the country. We recorded around 800 monuments of the road. Many of them were practically, in the last stages, but nevertheless, 400 were good enough to be, recorded and documented and status report made. This was one project we did. The other project for Intac we did was the heritage of the Mahanadi. Everybody knows that the Mahanadi is a unique river. It's Mahanadi. One of the name itself is described. The nomenclature describes itself. The Manamunda excavation on the Mahanadi valley excavations were, whatever little was done, had very rich finds, very rich finds, which ranged from the prehistoric to the later period. A very navigable river, which from the sea, they could navigate it right up till Sambalpur, upstream. We did the Orissa portion. We covered both the banks, and the entire heritage, 10 kilometers on either bank, was recorded. We were surprised at, we were surprised to see the sheer number, the sheer absolute number of heritage structures that were still there, either, in a very delicate state. Some of them are good enough. We were even surprised to discover 63 temples which were now in the middle of the river. In earlier days, before the dams were built, the Mahanadi was a very volatile river. It had, there used to be catastrophic flooding. It was a meandering river. There were a lot of twists and turns, and many of the Shaiva temples were built on the banks. So when the river changed its course, they engulfed these temples, and the temples found themselves to be in the middle of the river. The villagers, they removed the deities, made another temple somewhere, but these temples remained there. Of the 63 temples we discovered, the antiquity ranged from the 9th century, 13th, 14th century till, and most of them were still intact. Even after being submerged for more than 500-600 years in the water, the temples were still upright, though a few had crashed and fallen down through, had bent over through, had leant and fallen down, but most of them were recoverable. And once again, like I said, throughout the valley we found, once again, cross culture. We found Jaina, we found Buddha, we found Hindu heritage. This is what we had also found in the Jagannath Sadak. That document too, we recorded it, nearly 500 monuments, most of which need a lot of repair. Those were documented. The maritime tradition, inland maritime tradition of the Mahanadi, we found many evidences of it. Work had not been done. We even recorded that. Like I said, I had talked about the tribal heritage. Intact, besides doing tangible heritage, also does intangible heritage. We undertook 2 projects in the tribal region of Koraput, where we studied 2 tribes and basically recorded the metamorphizing, world for them, the changes that have occurred in the tribal culture, in the tribal society, every which way. Our report was titled Tribes in Transition, in which we documented 2 tribes, the Kandhos and the Gadavas. And the Kandha had 3 sub-tribes, the Desiya Kandha, the Kutia Kandha and Dongariya Kandha. So what we found is in the study was, in the fast changing life, the fast changing tribal life is a sort of a, the deculturation that is happened is practically, killing the entire tradition and history. It is just plain and simple cultural genocide. The traditions, the customs, the language, the food habit, the dresses, the social pecking order, which survived and survived successfully for 2,000-3,000 years, has seen so much change in the last 3 decades that very few of it is left in its pure form. Languages are forgotten, food habits have changed, agricultural practices have changed, livestock practices have changed with the intention of, and basically with the education, like I said, the tribal education, the tribal knowledge was not something codified like we teach them today. We have tribal schools, we have tribal hostels where we take them and put them all together from different tribes, and they study, they get modern education, which we are not against it. But in this course they are losing the traditional knowledge which most of it is untapped. Even we haven't tapped it till today. Like I told you, the ethnobotany, the tribal's survival instincts, how he relied on the forest and in a very sustainable way. As long as the Adivasis were using or looking after the forests, there was no decimation of any plant or animal species. They lived in a very sustainable manner. It is our modern day mining, modern day industrialization, modern day's policy which has made animals extinct, and even many flora has become extinct also. For a tribal, he knew how to live with nature. So the report which we published, we never expected it, in which we took all the indicators, the economic indicator, the social indicator, the cultural indicator, all the indicators which we took, we found that there were drastic changes happening. Lot was being lost, and had already been lost. It was irreversible, and it was a document in which we have submitted to the authorities to be that there should be a rethinking in the tribal development plans. What the government of Orissa does, through the development agencies, working for the tribals, it really needs a serious rethought. That was one aspect. Another aspect of Orissan history culture is the maritime tradition. We have waxed eloquent of how the ancient marriages of Orissa were indulging in trade and had contacts with Cambodia, with Thailand, Bali, Sri Lanka, Burma. They knew the ocean currents, they knew the ocean winds, and they would sail to the distant lands for trading, and much of this has archaeological evidence, in as much we find temples of Kalingan style in Cambodia, we find them in Burma, we find them in Bali, and there is evidence. And it was a rich trade, a lot of Odia folklore, a lot of Odia legends, they harp around it. Orissa had a very big coastline, still has the largest coastline, and a thriving shipbuilding industry, proof of which can be seen from the iconography or the sculpted images on even the Konark temple and all the other temples. Nevertheless, there was a rich maritime tradition, which in our opinion has not been studied because we don't have a marine archaeology wing, and the one of the ASI till today they haven't done any survey of any shipwreck. We know the Orissa coast is littered with shipwrecks because we know it's a cyclone zone. Many ships used to sink there, but not a single shipwreck has been explored to a certain extent even today to establish this maritime tradition of ours. As a storehouse for knowledge, I talked about the tribal knowledge. I will just exemplify that the Odisha State Museum has a collection of more than 30,000 palm leaf manuscripts. The general idea about a palm leaf manuscript when we talk of it is we think it will be a religious text, the Bhagavad Gita, astrology or something, But all the palm leaf manuscripts have been digitized, well preserved, catalogued. You will be surprised that these palm leaf manuscripts, which have ancient knowledge, cover every subject from astronomy to zoology. Many of the palm leaf manuscripts, are illuminated. By illuminated, I mean they have drawings. Normally we think there will be just some scribbling with a stylus or there will be some script. No. The manuscripts at the Orissa State Museum have range from subjects of temple building, botany, zoology, forestry, shipbuilding, temple architecture, medicine, Ayurveda, besides the religious texts. 2, the sheer astronomy, clear-cut exhibition, and they are illuminated. You even got butterflies and bees in very much detail. Like why I say this is 30,000 manuscripts. Can you imagine the sheer storehouse of knowledge which is waiting to be deciphered? Even it has been digitized, A lot of work needs to be done. Like I told you, it ranges from the prehistoric till, while it is transitional, a lot of it, there's a big connect also. We did work on the Prachi Valley, a very small river valley, hardly 50 kilometers long, which had on both its banks, if you take it together, they had, I am not talking of the present state, 300 temples. There were anchorages, there were ports, ghats, forts, and once again in a chronological order. In this 45 or 50 kilometer river bank, you find Jaina monuments, you find Buddhist monuments, you find innumerable mutts, even today some of them are there, some are wiped away. You find temples, you find remnants of fort, you find remnants of anchorages, of ancient river ports. Excavation was done at Jalalpur by the ASI. Wonderful collection, They found Roman pottery. So this I'll tell you is like Odisha is still unexplored. Like I said, in spite of the ASI and the state archaeology, and we have quite a few universities which have archaeology departments, the work that should be done has not been done. If a very thorough and composite study by way of excavation, by way of deciphering the inscriptions which are there, practically huge of ones which have not even been deciphered, and proper search is made on more manuscripts, more copper plate engravings, proper excavation is done, and more temples and all are excavated, more habitations are excavated. I am sure we will not only have to rewrite the history of Odisha or the history of India, we will have to rewrite civilizational history. This is a certain fact.